Hi, everyone. This is Phil Roos from Great Lakes Growth Works, here again to talk with one of my colleagues who's recently conducted another in a series of conversations with various consumer cohorts. This is my colleague, Taylor Landeryou, and she recently did a couple of sessions with Gen Z consumers. Hi, Taylor. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Phil. Excited to talk with you about Gen Z.
And boy, since you did the original couple of groups, a lot has changed in the world. We've had, in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder and subsequent protests, and I understand you did a little bit of follow-up with some of the people you spoke with earlier, so I'm looking forward to hearing some of that as we go through this discussion, where there are new things that you heard since doing the original conversations.
Yeah, certainly there's been a lot of development. So just to start off, it's important to point out that Gen Z is a really young generation. So there's a lot of smaller cohorts that exist within this generation. They span from middle schoolers to recent college grads. So there's some pretty big difference in life stages that they're experiencing. The Gen Zers that I talked with are all current college students in universities across the Midwest.
Good, good. Excited to hear what you heard. What were some of the headlines you heard in terms of pain points or fears related to COVID particularly, the things they're going through that they're kind of struggling with?
Yeah, so overall, this is a planful, very future-oriented group. Their short lifetimes have been filled with a lot of uncertainty, from 9/11 and its aftermath to the Great Recession. And because of this uncertainty, they've leaned into being prepared and practical. They've had their futures mapped out, go to this college, have this internship, get this degree, win that job. And now they've really been hit with a massive curveball that's left them and everyone around them pretty disconcerted. Whether it's future job prospects or, returning to an online classroom in the fall, even returning to school at all in the fall. But so I've talked to them recently, and now as things are starting to open up, some are seeing more job opportunities or getting their internships unfrozen. And I think they are hopeful, but still very cautious about the potential for a second wave, particularly with vulnerable family members in mind, not so much themselves.
Okay. You mentioned hopefulness. What were some of the positives they were taking away from this crisis, or areas they were hopeful for in the future?
Yeah, so when I first talked to them, they've had pretty high hopes for some positives that could come from this experience. They envisioned the crisis uncovering difficult issues like lack of preparedness for environmental disasters or social equities, and those bringing about deeper societal change. And now we're certainly seeing this come to fruition as the Black Lives Matter movement to end racial inequalities and police brutality builds momentum. So we are really seeing that surge and deeper societal changes coming out of this.
Interesting. Did you have any discussion about how all of this was affecting buying behavior, products or services that they were leaning on more or not using that they used to use? Because these are people, they may not have huge purchasing power, but they're buying things for sure.
Yeah, so they are all in saving mode, especially those living with parents. They see this as an opportunity to really get some funds put away for a future that they're not so sure of. They're just purchasing necessities like groceries, though there are some kind of self-care items. They're looking to support their health, whether that's getting a good night's sleep, reminding themselves to exercise, maintaining their mental health. Other things that, maybe keep them busy, such as hobbies or reading those books on their shelf they never got to, and even some home improvement or craft supplies. And then, of course, they're trying to stay connected and socialize with their friends. So they're not exactly buying new phones or computers, but their usage of different platforms has certainly increased.
And I don't know if this came up in your discussions or you just have reflections on this. Curious about companies or brands that are doing a particularly good job of speaking to this cohort.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
So a lot of online brands, like Netflix and Amazon are, of course, doing well across all generations. But then
Speaking to all of us, for sure.
Yeah. But then there's platforms like Snapchat or TikTok that are seeing an increased usage right now, particularly with Gen Z. But then there's brands like Nike that have been taking a stand in regards to like the pandemic or the Black Lives Matter movement. And Gen Z is a very politically aware generation, so they're watching what brands are doing. So that doesn't mean that, you know, Nike is making a bunch of money off of Gen Z right now, but, you know, they're setting themselves up for future success. So perhaps once Gen Z has more discretionary funds, they will buy from companies that are using their platform for good.
Do you have any idea where this is all heading? Do you get a sense of that from this group of people that these two groups of people that you talked with, Gen Zers? What's going to stick? What's going to change in terms of the way they view the world and how they act and think?
Yeah. So following off kind of what I was just saying, I mean, Gen Z is a very tech focused, particularly mobile generation, and they want to make a positive impact in the world. They want to see some real change. You know, they're a generation of tech and digital natives, and they were born into an interconnected world. And so, you know, they may not have their own computers or laptops, but they're using mobile devices a lot for entertainment and socializing and shopping. You know, so brands, even if they're not selling a technology, they really need to have some kind of strong way to engage with them on their phones. But Gen Z is also really interested in what's happening offline, not just what's online. You know, they're trying to see how companies and the world are taking concrete actions. Of course, this is true anytime, but especially so during this pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement. And, you know, now we're in the month of June celebrating Pride Month. So, like I said, Gen Z is really looking for companies to take a stand and support a new world with tangible actions. And for companies, this might not bring in profits right away, but it will foster meaningful relationships with Gen Z to create future brand loyalty.
Okay, great. Taylor, thanks so much. Great to hear about this group of consumers, and we'll keep tracking them as time goes on, because who knows, the world might change again in the next week or two or a month. So thanks for being part of this.
Yeah, thanks for talking with me.
Take care.